Good evening, friends, and I welcome you to today's seminar. And welcome, Atul Bhai. Thank you for acceding to our request at the first this thing. And I would like to hand over to Bharat Sachdev for his opening remarks, the President of TPA. Bharat, please.
So, good evening. Thank you, Vijay. Good evening, friends. It's a pleasure to again see all the familiar faces and new faces on this screen. अभी भी हम जूम पे ही एक दूसरे की शक्लें देख पा रहे हैं. बहुत जल्द साथ में सामने सामने मिलेंगे. लेकिन ये भी गम नहीं. एटलीस्ट हम एक दूसरे को देख पा रहे हैं. So this is a beautiful platform. So in continuing with our series of these lectures and important topics, today we are happy to have Atul ji here, and I'm happy that Arvind is moderating this session. As a training thing, a very important topic, 194 Q and section 206. बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग रहेगा और मैं श्योर हूँ कि we will all enjoy. I would like to welcome you all and would like to welcome my co-presidents of the association and the office bearers. Firstly, Atambhai Tekchandani, President of Tax Friends Association, Mumbai. I welcome participants from Bhiwandi Tax Practice Association, GST Bar Association, Varanasi, Income Tax Bar Association, Prayagraj, Association of Tax Practitioners, Vellore, Baroda Tax Bar Association, Vadodara, and of course my parent association, AIFTP North Zone. I really welcome you all here, and I wish that happy learning. एक चीज कभी-कभी अच्छा लगता है कि कोई सेक्शन नया आया, उसका आनंद मनाए कि दुख मनाए कि काम बढ़ गया, आनंद मनाए कि ये सेमिनार रखने का मौका मिलता है और हम सबको एक दूसरे के साथ मिलने की चर्चा होने की चांस मिलता है. So friends, I hand over to Arvind Ramani, Chartered Accountant, for moderating the session, and happy learning to all. Thank you.
Bharat, before we hand over to Arvind, I would request Naveen Ratanji, Chairman North Zone, to say a few words.
Sir, we have already welcomed so much everybody, and it's my moral obligation to welcome all of you over here. And I welcome each and every person who is a part of this webinar. And the topic is really very interesting. We hope that we will enjoy, not only enjoy, we will learn so many things, because the very name is controversies under section 194Q and 206 of Income Tax Act. I think apart from this, we can watch this program on YouTube too, if I am not wrong. Is it correct?
Yes, it is live.
Yes, it's live.
So I won't consume much of your time. Let the process be initiated webinar, which is very, very crucial now at this stage. Because you know, in our old religious places, we have mentioned ये एक जो विद्या एक ऐसा धन है, आप जितना इसको खर्च करोगे ये उतना ही बढ़ता है. तो taking these views from our old sayings, you are doing very well. You are doing very well, and keep it up. That we share our knowledge on the various issues, intricate topics, and I appreciate your courage. And I expect that many more functions and many more webinars, many more seminars will also be continued with full swing in coming days also. Apart from, we are also very eager to meet each other, and hopefully the day is not far off. We will be face to face. Thank you very much. Let the proceedings be initiated. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I now request our Deputy President, AFTP, D.K. Gandhi, sir, to say a few words, please. Gandhi, sir.
Yes. Good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
Now, after Dr. Raveen Nitan has said, Mr. Bharat Sachdev has said, I congratulate all of you for joining hands for doing this activity in a wonderful manner, and which Mr. Vijay Keval Ramani especially has been doing it under the banner of Tax Friends and other associations, and now he has taken, you just understand his friendship. He has joined hands with none other than North Zone. This is something beautiful relationship which we are having, a association which is extreme west, and we are sitting here in Varanasi, Amritsar, and all doing so. So once again, congratulations to Vijay, congratulations to Dr. Ratan and to Puneet as well to Bharat Sachdev for starting this wonderful series again. I congratulate and request you to start the webinar very quickly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Arun Bhai Ramani, our moderator, to take over.
Good afternoon to one and all. Today's speaker, Sri Atul Suraiya sir, seniors in the profession and friends. I, C. Arvind Ramani, on behalf of Consortium of All Association, welcomes one and all to seminar on the controversies in Section 194Q and Section 206C of the Income Tax Act 1961. To deliberate on the topic, we have very eminent and learned speaker, Sri Atul Suraiya sir. Before he starts his presentation on the topic, as a protocol, I will briefly introduce him. Sir is presently the tax partner of TP Oswal and Associates. Before joining TP Oswal and Associates, he was a general manager taxation Tata Chemical from 2009 to November 2020. Since qualified as a CA in the year 1987, he was a partner in Messrs. Charger and Doshi, a CA firm. He was a part of the core team which take care of the profession practice of the firm when SP Charger sir was in Delhi as a vice president and president of the institute during the year 1999-2000. Friends, he had in-depth knowledge in Indian direct tax compliances, advisory and litigation services. He had represented before DRP and ITAT in more than 85 cases. He had briefed senior counsels for matters to be argued in high courts and Supreme Courts of the India. He had vast experience in the field of corporate taxation and transfer pricing. He had actively participated in various committees of ICI at regional and central council level. He was committee member of DTC of ICI. He has been delegate to present pre-budget memorandum to Revenue Secretary, Government of India in the year 2014. He is a committee member since 1994 of the Chamber of Tax Consultants. He was chairman and panel member at various platforms like BCS, Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industries. He is a regular contributor to IT Review, study circles, ICI Journal, IMCs, etc., etc. He is also a frequent speaker at forums on the tax issues like TDS and other taxation matters. He was instrumental to bring changes to TRESS's website for user-friendly interface. With this, I present before you a speaker for the day, Sri Atul Suraiya sir. But before he start his presentation, I request all of the participants to raise their questions only in the chat box. And once the presentation is over, we will take all the questions raised by the participant and request the speaker to deliberate on the each and every questions raised, subject to availability of time. Thank you. Over to Atul sir.
Yeah.
Kindly take charge.
Is my presentation visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. It's really a pleasure to talk to the Tax Practitioners Association Thane and all the various associations that Vijay Bhai Keval Ramani has been able to get together and give an all India presence to this seminar. It is my pleasure to be able to lead this discussion, and the controversies attached to Section 194Q and 206C1H are so many that we are going to have an interesting seminar. And before I start, I have to give this compulsory slide, which I always start my presentations with, because whenever I discuss whether direct taxes or any legal matter, I always find that this is the backdrop with which I have to start. It was quoted by none other than Justice Sujata Manohar, who was in the Supreme Court. She had said, "I am the country's draftsman. I draft the country's laws. For most of the litigation, I am the cause." This we shall see as we proceed in how these sections were introduced, why these sections were introduced, how they are going to take effect, and how the department has behaved in guiding us, telling us what is to be done, what is not to be done, what was the background with which they were brought, and with the GST laws that are already in place, whether these provisions were required or not. This is something that we'll really be dwelling upon and looking at how the draftsman has actually behaved and misbehaved in his efforts to bring this statute to bring both these sections to the statute book. I have prepared a small chart which is actually telling us the basic criteria of each of these sections. The sections are, I have the basis of distinction, TDS under 194Q, what does it relate to, and TCS, that is tax collection at source, under 206C1H. Now we all know that 206C relates to tax collection at source, but the number of subsections have been so many that even the department has lost track, I would say, to a great extent. And there have been carve-outs, there have been exclusions, there have been inclusions, there have been overlaps. To what extent we are to go and understand the law is going to be a big challenge. First of all, the effective dates of both these sections are not the first day of the assessment year or the previous year that we normally are dealing with. Each of them have got different dates. And to reconcile ourselves with those dates and the turnovers that we are trying to look at for the year under consideration, eligible SSEs, non-eligible SSEs, there is such a lot of confusion that finally the department had to come out with as many as 3 circulars, and yet I am not sure any of us are absolutely clear as to what is required to be done, and whatever we are doing is right or wrong. Whether the Traces website, which is actually dealing with the TDS and TCS provisions, and the returns that we file, are they reading the sections and the provisions the same manner in which we are reading them? Are we clear on it, on the provisions as they understand and as we understand, and the manner in which we will be doing this exercise and putting it across in our TDS statements, how it will be reflected and how the demands will be raised against us, whether in respect of short deduction, interest, penalty, thereafter prosecution, and of course the disallowances that our auditors are going to qualify and put in our tax audit reports. All of these things put together is going to face us with a tremendous challenge for which we have to be ready. Now, to having talked about the effective dates, section 194Q, that is TDS on purchases, has come effective from 1st July 2021. That is recently, as recent as 9-10 days back. But at the same time, we'll have to look at the turnover of the preceding year as well as the current year, the gross receipts. This is what the second criteria is, the turnover threshold and the limit to be considered. The total sales for 194Q or gross receipts or turnover of the preceding year exceeds rupees 10 crores. So if last year my turnover was less than 10 crores, then I am not covered altogether. If this year it is a more than 10 crores, last year it was more than 10 crores, I'm covered for this year. So for financial year 21-22, the turnover of the buyer for the financial year 2021 is to be considered whether it exceeds 20 crores or not. Now, similarly, we had last year the provision coming in for tax collection at source. And this was here on the basis of the sales. It was the seller's duty who had to collect the tax at source. So this was a different ball game that he had to play. We were very comfortable with our TDS provisions, but TCS, for the few sectors that were already there, we had the provisions. Scrap sales among the largest ones that was there, which was across industries, whereas the others were only of forest produce or liquor or tendu leaves, and therefore they were of specific industries. But the TCS now has come across all the industries, and where the total sales or gross turnover for the previous year exceeds rupees 10 crores. So for financial year 21-22, again, the turnover of the seller for financial year 2021 has to be considered. These are the basic criteria. Now, how they are raising controversies, what it is going to amount to, I will come as we proceed. First, I'm only dealing with the bare provisions as they are in the next 3 slides, so that we are totally aware of what we are going to tread on. And the responsibility of deduction and collection. Here, the responsibility under 194Q is going to be upon the buyer. He will deduct the tax at source from the seller. So when he is paying to the seller, he will deduct the tax from his bill, from the total amount to be paid, not only the bill, total amount to be paid. Here also, how it has to be determined, what is the percentage to be applied, we will come to. Similarly, for tax collection under 206C, the seller has to collect the tax at source from the buyer. At what stage he has to do it, that we will come to very soon. As it is, we have enough controversies in Chapter 17B, that is TDS and TCS of the Income Tax Act. Here we are going to add to some of them. most of the sections under TDS have got the concept of deduction at the time of payment or credit to the account of the payee or a suspense account, whichever is earlier. Now, this concept is pervading through all the sections of TDS except 192, that is TDS on salaries, and 195, that is payment to non-residents, remittances to non-residents. Now, these two sections apart, everywhere this concept has come up, and therefore the accrual system of accounting is at a challenge. Whereas as far as 192 and 195 are concerned, it is the cash system of accounting. Not to forget that for MAT purposes, even the new Ind AS, which is a real value system of accounting, also has been brought into the Income Tax Act. So all of us have to be aware of the various accounting concepts also, how they are applied to each of the clients that we are advising and whose returns are being processed through our advice and being filed with the Income Tax Department. Now we have to deal with all these three: the original at cost method, then the real value accounting as far as MAT is concerned. Now we have cash system for 192 and 195, and we have the accrual, pure accrual system for all the other sections of chapter 17B. Now how they are going to play, we are going to have a challenge by itself. We will come to. Now where is the responsibility of deduction? The buyer will deduct tax at source from the seller as far as 195 4Q is concerned. And 206C is concerned, it is the seller who will be collecting the tax at source from the buyer. What are the rates? The rates are very simple if we look at, and among the lowest possible rates on the chapter of 17B. We have the normal rate of PAN is submitted, then it is 0.1%. It is the same for both the sections, 0.1%. If the PAN is not submitted, the rate goes straight away to 5%. As far as 194Q is concerned, for 206C1H, it is 1%. Then the two new concepts that have come from this year, again from 1st July, that is 206AB and 206CC. Now, what are these two new concepts? That if the person whose tax is being deducted or from whom the tax is being collected, if he has not filed his return of income for the preceding 2 years within the normal time allowed under 139(1), and the total amount of TDS in that case exceeds rupees 50 lakhs, in that case, the rate at which the deduction has to be done under 194Q here remains at 5%, whereas in 206C also it remains at 1%. For all other TDS provisions, the rate is double or 5%, whichever is higher. So for contracts, we have already 2%, which raises itself to 5%. And for various other provisions, there are lots of confusions. Now, the manner in which the deductor or the collector has to go about collecting this data, verifying this data, is it because this also came into effect only from 1st July 2021, and the process by which this whole method could be understood was only given after the 15th of June 2021. Therefore, there was a lot of confusion, especially for TDS on dividends. There was a big challenge because the shareholders ran into lakhs of people, and those shareholders, whether they have filed their returns in time or not, whether the TDS applicable to them was 50,000 or not, this was a challenge by itself. However, now the utility has been put in place. However, we know the utility plus the change in the site of income tax itself, both put together, have raised more challenges than solving them. Perhaps we were better off in the old system. But however, now that the new system has come and we are supposed to put it in place, we are trying our level best. Of course, for companies, there are various chartered accountants who are trying their level best to be able to find this method of 206AB and 206CC, to what extent they can get accurate results. This is going to be a challenge by itself when they are going to be processed, because by the time the statements filed for this quarter, which is going to be only after the quarter ends in July, the quarter will be ending on 30th September. We will file our statements in the middle of October, and thereafter the processing will start. By then, the system would have settled down. So the difference between the timing of when the provisions have come on the statute book, the processes have been put into place or made available to us, and the time when the assessment or the processing of those statements is going to take place is going to be a huge timeline. Now, this huge time lag is exactly what I was talking about when I said that I am the country's draftsman. I draft the country's laws. For most of the litigation, I am the cause. This is the main reason why I said so. Because when he has drafted the section, that was in when the budget was presented. When it has been put into action, that is 1st July 21 or 1st October 20. When the deductors and the deductees are going to start having the effect is in the following months thereafter. And when the statements will be filed and they will be processed. How much change is going to happen in the law and the procedure is nobody's guess. And the output is going to be the demands raised on all of us. At the same time, what the draftsman has lost sight of is that the new provisions that have been brought in, how they are going to be effective on the systems that we are going to rely on. Because we all agree that none of these things can be done without relying on computer systems, electronic systems. Now, for that, the software has to be developed first. The systems may have to be adjusted, the accounting systems, the SAP software, Tally, whatever software we are using for our recording our purchases and recording our sales. They will have to be modified according to these sections. They have already been modified as per the GST provisions. And all this data is, frankly speaking, available with the GST department or the government through the GST department. And if the data is already available, why bring such sections with only 0.1% deduction? How much revenue collection is really going to be there and what monitoring is going to take place? This is a challenge or a question by itself. On the contrary, all of us who have become the data entry operators of the government, we will be put to task at a much more time, at a lot of time and cost to first of all develop the software, develop our systems, put it into place, train our staff to use them, and thereafter see to it that the accurate return has been filed. Because for the accuracy of the returns, what is relied upon is the DSC of the principal officer who is signing those statements. So he himself has to be fully aware, his downstream staff has to be fully aware, and the clients or the customers whose tax is being deducted, they have to be fully aware. All of these put together, and all of us at the cost that we have to incur on developing these systems, for which the government is not in any way supporting us. We are not getting any benefit for having done this exercise. It is a compliance cost that we have to go ahead with. Now, the third, the manner in which we have to determine all these liabilities and these rates, we have to look at the turnover threshold limit to be considered. What are these threshold limits? For 194Q, the payment or consideration in relation to the aggregate purchase value in excess of rupees 50 lakhs after the 1st of July 2021. And similarly, last year we had for sales 1st October 2020. Again, fortunately, the same limits have been kept, 50 lakhs in each. Now, how these are to be determined? Again, there is a controversy because this is to be for the previous year. Now, year starts, we all know, in April, while these provisions take place somewhere in July, somewhere in October. Now, the controversy thereon. If I've already had a turnover or purchases of 50 lakhs from 1st April to 1st July, whether I have to consider it or ignore it. Similarly, last year when we had sales, we had to consider or ignore the sales between 1st October and 1st April and 1st October. That was raising another controversy. And therefore, how do I place my systems in place that from when do they have to start calculating? If I have crossed only 25 lakhs before 1st October and I'm crossing within the first transaction more than 50 lakhs in the second quarter, after 1st October, what is the turnover on which I have to consider the deduction of 0.1%? And that too, if tomorrow the deductee has got a 197 certificate or a lower deduction certificate, what will be the impact thereof? Again, is a question mark by itself, which has not been answered by the department in spite of the fact they have come out with some clarifications, as they call it. I don't know how much of clarification is there, but I think that a lot of things have been put to confusion in that. And therefore, we'll have to look at those provisions before we actually put into place both these systems and pay the correct tax and face the final filing of returns. The last part of my chart, which is supposed to give the bare idea as to what is there in these two sections. And then after, I will go on to the department's clarifications and the controversies attached thereto. So as I told you, when do we have to deduct the tax at source under 194Q? It's on the accrual system. That is at the time of payment or credit of such sum to the books of accounts, including the suspense account, or at the time of payment, whichever is earlier. So if I'm making an advance payment for the purchases, that time I have to deduct the tax. Or if I'm paying after the full credit period is there, or even a delayed payment, and the payment is delayed, but my actual purchase takes place, the delivery of goods takes place, the liability has crystallized, the invoice has been received, I have entered it in my books of accounts, then at that stage I have to deduct the tax at source. Similarly, for as far as TCS is concerned, on sales, it is at the time of receipt of the amount. Now, this had raised a major controversy when we were trying to design or make the changes in our system. I was at that time working with the corporate, and therefore they asked us, how do we account for, how do we keep track whether the sales that has been made before 1st October 2020 and after 1st October 2020, or now when this is at the time of receipt, but there are some sales which have been made before 1st October 20, but the collection has come after 1st October 2020, whether tax has to be collected at that time or not. Now, there also, that was one question that was raised. Another question was raised, until and unless I don't raise a demand on the person who has purchased the goods from me, to whom I have made the sales, will he make the payment to me? That was a major question that we were grappled with. And we also came to the conclusion that yes, we will have to, until and unless this TCS is not made a part of my invoice, we will not get the collection thereof. The other party may say, you have never demanded it, where is the question of my paying to you? And that is why we had to design our invoices in such a manner that we incorporated the TCS therein. Now, incorporating the TCS therein was a good enough exercise to be done. But thereafter, explaining the provisions to the person to whom the sales has been made and giving him the credits thereof. And supposing we did not do that, then we would have to resort to debit notes and credit notes, which again, the accounting thereof and the reconciliation thereof would be a challenge by itself. And therefore, it was better thought after a lot of discussion that we should put it in the invoice itself rather than resorting to debit notes and credit notes, which could be a subject matter of dispute, reconciliation, and all that. And the very good relations that have been there between the buyer and seller, perhaps they could come in jeopardy because the new cat has come between the two monkeys, and that cat wants to see that who is to get the larger pie of the bread that is to be shared between the two monkeys. That sort of a story actually was coming up, and therefore the business told us, no, you please put it in the invoices, and we'll be happy to be able to explain to them. Once a demand is raised, we'll be able to collect the tax from them. And if not, down the years, it will be on account, and therefore we will get the amount. That was one aspect of changing the accounting system. By the time that accounting system was settled, came the new 194Q, in which purchases I had to do the TDS. Now, there might be, no doubt, persons to whom I'm selling may be different, and the persons from whom I'm purchasing may be different. And therefore, perhaps trying to draw a parallel between the two would be an unnecessary exercise. But at the same time, whatever has been, finally, wherever I'm making a purchase, it is somebody else's sales. And therefore, he may be saying that I will be attracted by 206C, whereas I'll be saying that this is a purchase, so I am attracted by 194Q. Now, whether both of them will apply or not, that is another major question, again, on which the section itself gives some clarification, but practical aspect of which is going to be a big challenge. They have tried to clear out some of the provisions and what the department is trying to look at, that they have tried to bring out, but I am not sure that clarity has come as clearly as it should have and as it would have. And the time at which it has come is the biggest challenge. For 194Q, the clarifications have been brought by circular number 13, dated 30th June 2021. The new section is coming into effect from 1st July 2021. Now, within 24 hours, if after studying all those clarifications, can I make the changes in my system? Can I train my staff? Can I educate my purchasers and sellers and my accounts department and be able to gear up for an effective compliance from 1st July 2021? This is the biggest question that needs to be raised. And the draftsman says, I have done the job before it has been put into place. He has done his job. There is no doubt about it. But when he was supposed to do it, he was supposed to do this exercise on the 1st of March, or actually the 2nd of February, after the budget was presented. And it was proposed that this is going to come into effect. So if he had done this exercise after the budget was presented on 1st February, on 2nd of February, I could have understood. Then we had enough time from 2nd of February till July 2021 to be put our systems in place to raise all the controversies, raise all the problems that would have been faced to the department, and then the clarifications coming from them would definitely have been far more welcome, far more understood. But unfortunately, that has not been the case. We have to face this music now, and I hope the department as well as Traces are going to be good enough, liberal enough to be able to explain or to be able to understand what the problems have been and not raise unnecessary demands which are only going to be subject matter of rectification or wrongful enforcement, and therefore a very big challenge for all of us. There is a provision for overriding effect, which will, I raise the question of which will prevail over what, whether TDS on purchases 194Q will prevail over TDS on sales over 206C1H. We have subsection 5 in 194Q that it says if any other section of TDS applies or where TCS other than 206C1H applies, then 194Q will prevail, not otherwise. That will prevail. So we already have the circular number 720 of August 1998, which said that if one section is attracted under Chapter 17B, the same cannot have an overriding effect on another section. Therefore, if we have already been covered by one particular section and we have bona fidely been able to establish that we have understood that this section applies to our case and in all transactions with this party of a similar nature, then no other section will prevail over that. That is what we need to keep in mind. Similarly, in 206C1H, there is a provision that other subsections of 206C, as I told you, there are various other clauses in TCS 206C, can do leaves and scrap and whatever else have you, poll stations, all of them put together. Then if any of those apply, then 206C1H will not apply. Similarly, if 194Q applies, then 206C1H will not apply. So there are clauses which are giving an over exclusion to one of the others, and therefore we can go by that, and that can be proved. But unfortunately, we are not sure whether Traces will understand it in the same manner as we are understanding it. I have yet to look at what demands are going to be raised, and I'm sure we will have enough number of cases where there will be an overlap, where their contention will be that 206C should have been applied, and our contention will be 194Q should have been applied, though the clarification says very clearly that the rates applicable in both are the same. And Traces has now finally come to understand that wherever the rates are the same, then the mention of the section becomes immaterial. Because as far as the government is concerned, the revenue has come to the government and the bona fide of the deductor or the tax collector has been fully established. So this is more important than going into the question of substance over form, whether I've written 194Q or I've written 206C1H, that perhaps may become less important. Of course, the allocation of those amounts, how the state government and central government allocate it, is going to be a challenge, as it is between corporate tax and non-corporate tax. Similarly, such challenges will come up, and therefore, if some wrong demands are raised or if rectifications are to be filed, there are procedural aspects for which the cost will have to be incurred without a matching revenue, which we have already discussed. Then, as looking at the sections themselves, there are certain exclusions, but there are certain further exclusions that have come in the clarifications, which we shall discuss a little later. The basic exclusions that the section itself talks about is purchases from non-residents. So non-residents have been kept out of the purview. It's only from residents when I'm making a purchase that 194Q will be attracted, not otherwise. There are further some other exclusions which we will come to in the clarifications, but which are not there in the section itself. Similarly, under 206C1H, export sales, because again the material is being sold and is going to a customer outside India, who may or may not be subjected to tax in India. And therefore, a collection from him would not be in the right place, and therefore export sales have been excluded. There are further exclusions that have been come to that we will see in the few new slides that we take up next. As I mentioned, the clarification, so-called clarification or the guidelines under 194Q have been issued by Circular number 13 of 2021, which has been dated 30th of June 2021, and the new section has come into effect from 1st July 2021. So this is the way the draftsman has played his trick and ensured that all the controversies or the guidelines If I have not been able to implement, how they are to my detriment. If I have been able to implement, how they are going to be at my advantage. Both the things put together are given by a circular which is as late as this. But we are used to it because even for 192, we have been seeing that the circular for TDS on salaries comes every year, but there is no predictability on the date on which it will come. Though the Delhi High Court has been very categorical in saying that the return form should be made available to the SSCs on the first day of the assessment year. And the effort is definitely being done for the last 5 years, where the returns have been no doubt notified, ITR 1 and to ITR 7, but the utilities are not. And therefore, going by the spirit of the words that the High Court had used, they say that the return forms have been made available. Similarly, the guidelines have been made available on 30th June for something that is coming into effect from 1st July. But whether it can be implemented, whether they can be understood, whether the staff can be trained is a question by itself. And this they are not prepared to answer, or they are not prepared to take into consideration. And we need to represent on this very strongly. And I would urge the AIFTP and all the organizations participating herein that such clarification should come at a much earlier date. And if they have come at such a late date, then the effective date of implementing these sections should be postponed at least by another 3 months, by when the systems can be put in place, or by when the society at large can actually implement all these guidelines that are there in the true spirit with which they are mentioned. No doubt an exhaustive exercise has been done under these guidelines. Exhaustive to the extent they have covered many issues, but whether they are covering all the possible issues is a question by itself. So I do consider it exhaustive, but not absolutely exhaustive. Some of the items that have been covered here and which deals indirectly with a controversy by itself, that is applicability of the transactions carried out through various exchanges. There are practical difficulties in implementing the provisions of TDS contained in 194Q of the Act in case certain exchanges, in case certain exchanges and clearing corporations are involved. It has been stated that sometimes these transactions, there is no one-to-one contract between the buyers and the sellers. In order to remove such difficulties, this has been stated in the guidelines of 30th June. It is provided that the provisions of 194Q of the Act shall not be applicable. So exclusions have been given here in transactions in securities and commodities, because these have been declared to be goods of purchases under 194Q. So transactions of securities and commodities which are traded through the stock exchange or cleared or settled through the recognized clearing corporation, including those recognized stock exchanges or recognized clearing corporation located in the IFSC, that is the International Financial Service Center, which we have at Gandhinagar. Therefore, such transactions will not be covered under 194Q, though they are supposed to be purchase transactions. A good question that had come up was redemption of preference shares, which are done by the companies themselves, not through the stock exchange, but redemption that is done and the money is given directly to the shareholders, whether or not that will tantamount to a purchase, because redemption is treated to be a transfer under the Income Tax Act, no doubt about it. Whether it tantamounts to a purchase and whether 194Q will apply or not remains to be answered. To a certain extent, it says because it's not through the stock exchange, it would be covered. But I am not too sure whether it would be covered or not. If there are any other experts within this seminar that are there who have been able to examine this issue, we would like to be advised, because many corporates have raised this question and we need to respond to them. Similarly, as far as electricity is concerned, it is also considered to be a good of purchases, and therefore transactions in electricity, renewable energy certificates and energy saving certificates traded through the power exchanges. Now, this is again important. Traded through the power exchanges registered in accordance with the Regulation 21 of the Central Electricity Regulation Commission are they to be considered? They are not to be considered as part of 194Q. This has been clarified by the CBDT, and therefore these two exclusions which are not there in the section itself get covered under 194Q by way of a clarification. And therefore we need to keep these in mind as we proceed ahead. Calculation of threshold for financial year 21-22. As I told you, since the amount of 10 crores has to be considered, and whether the buyer is to deduct tax on the credit of the sum or the seller or on the payment of the sum, whichever is earlier, the provision of this subsection shall not apply to any sum credited or paid before 1st July 21. So one of the two limbs has to fall in the previous part prior to 1st July. When both of them fall after 1st July, definitely it is covered, there is no doubt. But if they're not following here, then whether or not it will be covered is a clarification they are given. So if either of the two events has happened before 1st July 21, that transaction would not be subjected to the provisions of 194Q of the Act. This is what we need to keep in mind, because number one is 10 crores, number two is 50 lakhs for that party. So these two items were to be looked at from this point of view, that whether any of them have already been booked earlier or the payment has been made earlier but booked subsequently, how it has happened, that will have to be examined. So if either of the two events has happened, and that is why I put that in bold, that this clarification is very important, that we need to examine this condition in particular. So if either of the two events has happened before 1st July 21, the transaction would not be subject to the provisions of 194Q of the Act. Similarly, since the threshold of 50 lakhs is with respect to the previous year, the calculation of the sum for triggering the TDS under 194Q shall be computed from 1st April 21. Hence, if a person has been a buyer already credited with us and or paid rupees 50 lakhs on or before 30th June 2021 to the seller, the TDS on 194Q shall apply on all credit or payment during the previous year on or after 1st July 21. So for every transaction, once 50 lakhs has been crossed even before 30th June, though 194Q did not apply, but because the concept has to be applied for the previous year into consideration and the financial year into consideration, therefore, every transaction after 1st July, if we have already crossed 50 lakhs, then it will be taken into consideration for the purpose of 194Q after 1st July 21. Even if the first bill is only of 25 lakhs, that would come into play straight away for 194Q after 1st July 21, if prior to 30th June, we have already crossed the limit of 50 lakhs. This we need to keep in mind. Most tax practitioners who are practicing on both TDS, direct tax and indirect tax, and especially those who are not going through TDS, through GST, they are grappled with this question, whether GST, how it should be treated as far as the purchases and the sales are concerned, whether the TDS or the TCS has to be done on the figure of including GST or excluding GST. This is one big other question that has been raised time and again across industries, not only for a particular industries, and across SSEs also, corporates, non-corporates alike. This question is perennial to everybody. We have to keep in mind that when the provisions of TCS came into play, there was a circular giving this clarification. Again, if you see the date of that circular is 29 September 2020. When the provisions came into play from 1st October 2020 of 206C1H. However, the circular did come before the section took action, and unfortunately, we could not place our systems according to the section. So, wide circular number 17 of 2020, dated 29 September, it was clarified that no adjustment on account of GST is required to be made for collection of tax under section 190, under section 206C1H of the Act, since the collection is made with reference to the receipt of the amount of sales consideration. The situation is different so far. Now, this clarification says it is different so far as TDS is concerned. So there's a distinction again between TCS and TDS. Here is one more example, because on 19th of July 2017, circular number 2013 to circular number 23 of 2017 was already put into place, where they said, wherever in terms of the agreement or contract between the payer and the payee, the component of GST on services comprised in the amount payable to a resident is indicated separately, that means it is mentioned separately in the bill, tax shall be deducted only under Chapter 17B of the Act on the amount paid or payable without including GST on services component. But where there is a composite bill, GST for the purpose shall be included in the IGST or CGST state, all of them that was clarified in that. But where there is a composite bill, which has got inclusive of the GST amount therein, then the TDS would be on the entire amount because GST is not separately mentioned. This has been further clarified in the subsequent paragraph. Let us see that. Now, with respect to 194Q, it clarifies. 194Q, it is clarified where the tax is deducted at the time of credit of the amount in the account of the seller, and in terms of the agreement or contract between the buyer and seller, the component of GST comprised in the amount payable to the seller indicated separately, the tax to be deducted under 194Q on the amount credited without including GST. This has been specified in this clarification. Further, the last paragraph is most important, where if the tax is deducted on payment basis, see, we know that it is either credit or payment. Payment basis, because the payment is earlier than the credit, the tax would be deducted on the whole amount, as it is not possible to identify that the payment is GST. What is the GST component involved already in that invoice? So they have had chat bhi meri, pat bhi meri. Both ways they are talking about, because they are given you two criteria for whichever is earlier. Now, this whichever is earlier goes against the SSE in the concept. And what is the final amount involved? It is 0.1% of the total value. There have been cases where we have been told by the businesses that we would rather pay that from our pocket. That was very convenient if you just had to pay the amount and forget about it. But no, I have to give the PAN number of the person whose tax I'm deducting or whose tax I'm collecting. Therefore, the credit has to flow finally because of my TDS return or TCS return. It has to flow finally to the person whose PAN is mentioned therein. So the deductees or the collectees account is going to be impacted. And therefore, the smallness of the amount cannot help me to bear the amount myself and finish the compliance. This is one very important aspect that we need to keep in mind. And therefore, the question comes up, what is the purpose of having a 0.1% on this whole entire transaction? How is the government revenue is going to be impacted? We may say that the smallness of 0.1% over the large number of SSEs finally will have a good collection for the government. I don't agree. It is definitely not. That much amount actually goes into the unallocated credits or unclaimed credits for the TDS that has already been done. There is already a huge secret reserve available with the government of India for the TDS that has been done and paid to the government, which has not been claimed either, or because of lack of PAN number, it has not been traced to the right person to whom it is there. And therefore, this 0.1% is not supposed to be a big amount that is going to add to the kitty. However, for the purpose of keeping track, for the purpose of bringing a coordination between the GST data and the income tax data, they are trying to bring this in, and therefore they have kept the amount at a very small amount of 0.1%, which argument is not at all convincing. But this is where the draftsman has tried to show that I have contributed to the exchequer, and therefore my performance is good enough. This is what the CBDT officers always try to prove. CBDT people are appointed only for 3 years at a time in this main drafting section or any of the sections that they have. And therefore, in those 3 years, they are supposed to prove how they have contributed or how they have benefited the exchequer or their contribution to larger collection of tax or larger collection of revenue for the government. And this is how they are trying to prove that we brought in some new section. I remember when that concept of Ind AS was to be brought in, and they said that we should have a committee. And I was on the committee of the institute, which was trying to coordinate between the revenue department and the CBDT and the institute as to what changes should be brought in for the Ind AS implementation. And the person directly with whom I was discussing, he told me one very simple thing. सुरैया साहब हमको एक चीज बताइए, ये सब चेंज करने से रेवेन्यू बढ़ने वाला है तो we make the changes, otherwise we don't waste our time. We straight away tell the minister that there is not going to be any increase in revenue, and therefore we have nothing to propose. So the whole approach of the department and the officers therein is what? The whole approach is to bring in or to show that we have been able to bring in more revenue to the department. And this is both these sections are nothing but that. This is what we need to keep in mind while implementing this. But for that, unfortunately, there is no shortcut, because finally the credit has to move and prove, and it has to be connected to the person whose tax has been deducted or whose tax is being collected. And there also, if there's a mismatch, we all know that is going only to the secret reserve of the government. At the same time, we have to do our duty. Otherwise, we are going to be penalized. If any shortfall in our performance is found, then we all know there is interest. Again, two different rates applicable there, whether we have deducted and paid to the government late, or not deducted and not paid. Therefore, two defaults, higher rate of interest, and therefore that interest we have to pay to the government. Supposing the tax has been paid by the deductee already, then also we have to get the certificate from our auditor. 226A has to be given, that has to be filed on the statement, and we have to prove that though we have not deducted, the tax has been deducted, has been paid to the government by the deductee, and therefore we should not be defaulted. You should not collect the tax from us again. So there is a provision in 201 that yes, in that case, only the interest for the period where the tax was not paid, or there is a difference between having paid and filed the return, that period would be covered by the interest, and that is what they have tried to cover. So again, as far as the department is concerned, they have got the tax in their kitty, whether from the deductor or from the deductee. And therefore, they are not in any way affected, prejudicially affected. This is something that we have to keep in mind. Of course, there are many SSCs who are not aware of the provisions of 201. And even if they are aware of the provisions, the procedure of 26A and loading it on the traces site is something which has not been brought to the notice of all. There was reluctance from the traces side to a great extent, because I was instrumental in this, that each of the 3 meetings that I attended with the WIRC, with the Chief Commissioner and the people who had come from Ghaziabad traces, when I proposed this, that 201 should be given effect to through the traces side, because otherwise the demand is already raised for short deduction. Similarly, it has not been given effect to. So the procedure number 1 of 26A was only established in 2017. And thereafter, only in 2019, that traces wake up to the concept of putting it into their site. Therefore, this we need to keep in mind and see to it that we reduce the tax flow that is going to the government where no credit is being finally given to the person to whom it is due. Similarly, 206AA, where there is no PAN number provided, naturally the credit cannot flow to anybody at all, because there is no PAN number provided. And PAN, the TDS credit flows only through the PAN number. We are all well aware of it by now. Our GST numbers are all based on our PAN number. So PAN number has become of paramount importance. No doubt now Aadhaar is also trying to help it. But either PAN or Aadhaar, if they are not put in place, what is the impact thereof, we know. And there's already a higher rate of tax. The credit does not move to the person whose tax has been deducted or paid. This we need to keep in mind. And therefore, ensure that most of the persons with whom we are dealing has a PAN number or a TAN or an Aadhaar number, which is mentioned, quoted, and accordingly tax is deducted. This is what we need to keep in mind. Another question normally happens, because in purchases, there's always a concept of purchase return also. Just as in sales, there is sales return. How these are going to be given effect to? This was given. Now, initially, the department stand was the amount is too small. Why do you waste your time on it? But thereafter, they realized no. Finally, the reconciliation of the accounts has to take place. And GST returns do have the details of the purchase returns. If I'm going to reconcile the GST return along with whatever income tax returns are going, and my figures of purchase or purchase returns are not going to match, again queries will be raised. And therefore, thus, where there is a purchase return, whichever happens earlier, again here the question of credit or payment, whichever is earlier is there. Thus, before purchase return happens, the tax must have already been paid, deducted and paid on that purchase. If that is the case, and against this purchase return, the money has been refunded by the seller, then this tax may be adjusted against the next purchase against the same seller. Now, what if there are one-off purchases? I may not have transactions with the same person again. That has been lost sight of while giving this guidance. Therefore, that needs to be clarified. Secondly, no adjustment is required if the purchase return is replaced by goods by the seller, as in that case, the purchase on which the tax was deducted under 194Q has been completed with the goods replaced. Definitely there, to that extent, definitely they're right in saying so. Because if there's only a replacement of goods in case of a purchase return and the fresh goods have been supplied, then they would have been billed and again on which TDS would have been done. Therefore, in that case, we should not have any duplication. That has been clarified very rightly so. Whether non-resident buyer whether a non-resident can be a buyer under 194Q. It is clarified the provisions of 194Q of the Act shall not apply to a non-resident whose purchase of goods from the seller who is a resident in India is not effectively connected with the permanent establishment of such non-resident in India. So the concept of some international taxation which comes into play has to be understood here. If there's a permanent establishment, which again has been clarified, in this case, permanent establishment shall mean a fixed place of business through which the business of the enterprise is wholly or partly carried on. So if there is a fixed place of business through which it has been carried on, yes, definitely, then in that case, TDS would have been done because that is through the permanent establishment. But where there is no permanent establishment, where many non-residents are giving this certificate to that effect, that we have no permanent, and this is part of the international taxation. Those who are dealing with 15CA, CB, they would have this concept very clear in their mind, that when we are making remittances or payments to non-residents or outside India or beyond the contours of India, definitely we are ensuring that we have a no PE certificate, that person doesn't have a permanent establishment in India. We take the TRC certificates as tax residency certificates of those countries where they are resident in. And nowadays, the concept of beneficial ownership is also there, that has been put into place. Now, these are all the procedures that we take care of while making remittances, and the certification for the remittances is being done. Therefore, those who are familiar with those concepts will definitely appreciate that this concept is also directly connected to that, and here there is no benefit to the Indian revenue that they can claim, and therefore they have been excluded. Again, this exclusion has to be incorporated in the section itself, which to a certain extent is lacking. Whether tax is to be deducted when the seller is a person whose income is exempt. Now, this is a concept that comes up where under section 10, there are many, or there are under 196A, we know various class of SSEs where no TDS is required to be done, like the RBI. If I have a transaction with the Reserve Bank of India, I don't have to deduct tax at source because the income from RBI is exempt, not under the Income Tax Act, but under the RBI Act itself. Section 46 of the RBI Act says that no tax should be payable by the bank on the income earned by it. Now, this is not a part of the Income Tax Act, and therefore we may not be clear about this. This was brought to light when actually we were doing the audit of RBI, and FBT had come in 2006 to 2009. In those 4 years, we realized whether RBI, being an employer, because the concept of FBT was an employer-employee relationship. It didn't recognize SSEs. It didn't recognize SSE under the Income Tax Act. It recognized an employer and employee. And there's no doubt about the fact that RBI is one of the largest employers in this country. And therefore, whatever benefits were given to its employees, whether they should be subjected to fringe benefit tax or not. And they said, when Income Tax Act doesn't apply to us, why we should? I said, how does Income Tax Act not apply to you? On the salaries you are paying, you're doing deduction of tax at source, which is under the Income Tax Act. So chapter 17B, some sections apply to you. So you cannot say the Income Tax Act does not apply to you. So we had a detailed discussion, a detailed research, and we came to the fact that RBI Act itself has a provision, which has been passed by the Parliament. At section 46 of the RBI Act, it says clearly that there shall be no tax on the income earned by the bank. Bank here refers to RBI. So similarly, there are other provisions that we know, government departments for that matter, who do not pay any tax because finally it's the government's department. From one pocket to the other, there would be no tax. And therefore, on such transactions, there would be total exemption. Similarly, in the question of 206C1H, it is clarified that the provision of this subsection shall not apply to sale of goods to a person being a buyer who is a person whose income is exempt from tax under the Act. And both these sections have been further clarified by the third para, which is very important. The above clarifications would not apply if only a part of the income of the person being a buyer or seller, as the case may be, is exempt. If part of the income is taxable and it is a composite bill of a purchase with other works contract involved therein, and therefore works contract is subject matter of being taxed, and the buying selling may not be subject matter of tax. Therefore, if at all it is If we need a bifurcation, then that would not apply. Then the entire bill would be subject to 194Q or 206C1H. This is something that we need to keep in mind. Very few cases that would come in, but a clarification has been given by the department because they considered it necessary. And the questions have been raised to that effect in many times. We do come across in TDS when various charitable institutions say that we are exempt from tax, therefore no TDS. And we have to convince them that you give us a certificate under 197, else we will have to deduct tax at source. Merely because you do not pay tax, that doesn't mean we do not deduct tax. I cannot step as a TDS officer into the shoes of the assessing officer. Even the Supreme Court of India and Transmission Corporation of India has held that very clearly, that the assessee or the deductor can never step into the shoes of the assessing officer. And therefore, certificates for remittances have to be taken under 195(2) or 195(3) or 197 of the Act, and only they are binding on the deductors. The deductors are otherwise bound by the provisions of the specific sections to deduct tax at source. This we need to keep in mind, and that has been clarified indirectly by this particular clarification. And the question of purchases through advance payments. There are certain suppliers who insist that we will supply to you, and especially the large ones. We will supply to you provided you are going to pay us in advance. If you are booking a purchase order for 10 crores, at least 2 crores has to be deposited first in advance. Some places even 8 crores has to be deposited in advance. And therefore the credit period definitely is curtailed to that effect. And the surety is there for the seller to very clearly state that he is going to collect the money. This is an effort that has been done to reduce bad debts. And we all know bad debts is a challenge by itself, claiming thereof under the Income Tax Act. We have to prove various conditions before we are allowed the provision or the write-off of bad debts. So to reduce the bad debts, there are many people who sell goods only on advance payment. Now, what happens in case of advance payment? If for my purchases I'm making an advance payment, do I have to deduct tax at source? Yes, it shall apply to advances. That is very clear. And the concept says very clearly, payment or credit to the account of the payee, whichever is earlier. Therefore, if I'm making the payment, whether by way of advance or not, if I'm making a payment to the person who's supplying the goods to me, I have to deduct tax at source under 194Q, and the rate remains the same. Very intelligent question that has been raised before the CBDT was, in the year of incorporation, I do not have a past track record on which you can rely, that whether I had 10 crores worth of turnover in the preceding year, because this is the first year of incorporation, and therefore the question has been clarified. It is clarified under 194Q that a buyer is required to have total sales, gross receipts or turnover from the business carried on by him exceeding 10 crores during the financial year immediately preceding the financial year in which the purchase of goods is carried out. Since the condition could not be satisfied in the year of incorporation, provisions of 194Q of the Act shall not apply in the year of incorporation. Now, here again, what has not been clarified is that if there was another entity, a proprietary concern or an LLP or a partnership firm, which has been taken over by a corporate entity. Now, whether in that case also it would not apply, that clarification has not been given. To my understanding, definitely it would apply, because those are separate SSCs, separate entities who have got different PAN numbers. The corporate entity would have a different PAN number, and therefore it is a new entity altogether as far as the income tax is concerned. The question of the business being taken over here, that will not arise at all, because in the preceding year, my turnover under this entity or under this PAN number was not exceeding 10 crores. So according to me, even those cases would not apply. But this is a subject matter of argument, and definitely we have had cases where investment allowance or carry forward of benefits for Chapter 6A, the question was always raised as to whether or not it would be carried forward to the units. It would be qua unit or qua SSE. That was a question that used to be raised, and therefore that controversy can still arise. Whether the provisions of 194Q shall apply to a buyer if the turnover from business is less than 10 crores. So I may have business plus I may have other transactions of my personal nature where there is a non-business activity. I have sold some furniture or I have sold a flat in a particular year, and my business was less than 10 crores. In that case, that would not be put together, that has been clarified in this particular case by this clarification issued on 30th of September. And therefore, only the business transactions are to be considered for whether they exceed 10 crores or not. There are some other miscellaneous important provisions that have been discussed at the end of that circular, which has taken as many as 5 subsections again into that paragraph, which I have tried to clarify in a different manner and highlight some of the provisions, because as we come across those cases, we are going to feel the pinch of it. We all know there's a provision of 194O where the e-commerce operator is required to deduct tax at source. Now, where the 194O has already been attracted and a purchase has been made through an e-commerce operator, whether the same purchases are to consider for 194Q. A clarification is given, and as I already mentioned, circular number 720 is already there, which says if it is covered under one, I should not be covering under the other. At the same time, this subparagraph of this guideline very clearly states that if the tax has been deducted by the e-commerce operator on a transaction under 194O, including transactions on which is not deducted on account of subsection 2 of 194O, that transaction shall not be subjected to TDS under section 194Q. So that would be going out. Similarly, under 206C1H, provides exemption from TCS if the buyer has deducted tax at source on goods purchased by him. So whatever 194O has already done, in that case, I would not be required as a seller to collect tax under 206C1H, where instead of the buyer, the e-commerce operator has deducted tax on that transaction on the sale of goods by the seller to the buyer of the e-commerce thing, it would not be attracted. If a transaction is both within the purview of 194O as well as 194Q, the tax is required to be deducted only under 194A and not under 194Q. That has been specifically provided. Now, for the facts of each of the case, you will have to establish that this particular transaction has already suffered the tax under 194O. I'm sure the certificate for Form 16A that you will be receiving in response to the 194O should be sufficient proof. Only correlating it with a particular transaction would be the business of the person representing the case. Similarly, if the transaction is both within the purview of 194O as well as 206C1H of the Act, tax should be required only under 194O, because here the rate under 194O is higher than under 206C. That has been further clarified. In the last paragraph, it says this is for the reason that the rate of TDS under 194O is higher than the rate of TCS under 206C1H. As I told you, the government is more interested in collection of tax or revenue collection rather than whether it is fair or not. And therefore, they have kept this rate under 206C as well as 194Q to a minuscule of 0.1%. But however, this has to be read with the provisions as they apply under section 194O also. So there are more than one section that is overlapping as far as 194Q is concerned. We need to keep that in mind. You may also have transactions under 194C where there is a contract for construction or for carrying out a particular assignment. Till now, if it was the material was supplied by somebody other than the person giving the contract, it was not attracting. But this year onwards, there has been change in 194C also. Work includes a definition where if the material is supplied by the entity which is a specified entity under 48(2)(b) of the entity with whom the transaction is taking place, in that case, it would be covered under work and the entire transaction would be subject to 194C. So if I have already been covered under 194C, then I would not be covered again under 194Q. This is another concept we need to keep in mind. So there are going to be many cases where there's an overlap of the sections, because at the time the original sections were put in place, the officers at that time and the draftsmen at that time, and the draftsmen who have drafted these, there has been a sea change. There has been no commonness involved in the two, though Income Tax Act is supposed to be the common feature, but that commonness is not there, and therefore that overlapping is taking place. We have the circular number 720 and these specific provisions and clarifications coming to our rescue to say that where one section has already been applied, you cannot apply another section and deduct tax again. This we need to keep in mind and see to it that our records and representations are made in the light of this fact, that where deduction has already been done under one section of Chapter 17, the same cannot be subject matter of another deduction under Chapter 17 again, because the wordings of the section are covering me in some way or the other. That interpretation is what we experts are supposed to give the benefit of to the businesses. It is further clarified in spite of the fact that section 194Q subsection 5 is already clarified that wherever there is a overlap between 194Q and 206C1H, it is 194Q that will prevail and not 206C1H. This is further in this very clarification point, it has been clarified that since both are of the same rate, therefore this concession has been given. The last sentence very clearly reads, this concession is provided to remove the difficulty since the tax rate of deduction and collection are the same under 194Q and 206C1H. Therefore, they have kept the rates at the same. Of course, the other concept is if they don't keep it at such minimal thing, the non-compliance would be much higher. And I would not be surprised if the concept of satyagraha will now come into the chapter of Chapter 17B, not by the department, but by the SSEs. They will force and they will tell the department, we are not going to comply, come what may. I'm already facing some of the queries from the industry to this effect, that what if we don't comply? And if that concept comes through, and if a satyagraha spirit is going to be brought into Chapter 17B, I will not be surprised, and the government will have to rethink. And that is why I'm time and again saying, if I have to incur so much cost for all this onerous responsibility, I have to have a matching concept of revenue by way of rebate on the tax that I've collected and paid to the government from my tax liability. If that is put into place, I'm sure the implementation will be much easier, even if the revenue is collected at a higher side by the deductors and the collectors, it will be compensated by the government, and they will also have to think that because then there is a cost attached to their revenue collection, and that cost will be the revenue they have to share with us. And therefore, this should be brought in place. All representations may please be taken care of. Vijayji, as well as all the representatives of the various, the chairman and the secretaries of the various bodies that are attending this function, may please keep this in mind while making the representation, that if the cost of compliance is to increase, there has to be a matching revenue. I think with that, I will end my presentation. I'm open to questions. Of course, there will be many, many questions. I may not have the answers for all of them. At the same time, I will be noting them. And I've been told specifically by some of the other organizations who are not participating today that please share those questions with us so that we can make our representations and deliberations through our seminars on the same issue. Vijayji, I may have taken less time than what you had originally thought, but at the same time, I thought I have covered majority of the issues that I wanted to cover. And I would now request, if the chairman permits, that the participants may raise their queries and problems, and let me see how much I can either answer those questions or take it up for representation before the various authorities.
Arun bhai, please.
Yes, sir.
Arvindji, please continue. Arvind Ramani ji, are you there?
हाँ सर, अनम्यूट नहीं हो रहा था.
कर दिया ना कभी से.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
फिर म्यूट हो गए.
फिर म्यूट हो गए सर. Arvind ji, you are muted.
एक मिनट.
हाँ.
Yes.
Is it audible?
Yes. Now it is.
Thank you, sir, for taking us to all the controversies to the provisions of 194C. There are some of the questions which are, I think you had already answered, but just to clarify the things, I'm reading out the question for you, sir.
Sure.
Is it okay?
Sure, please do.
First one, assessee is liable to TDS under 194Q and also 194H on commission charged by the seller. If the purchaser liable to TDS under 194Q and also 194H both.
See, 194H would be between the principal and the agent, and that would be on his commission income. Now, 194Q does not cover commission at all. It only talks about purchases, pure per se. And therefore, definitely the same transactions may have between, as far as the purchaser is concerned, it is a cost to him, no doubt. He is paying for the purchase of goods. Whether he is paying for the commission or not would be depending on the subject between the contract between the purchaser and the seller. If the seller is paying the commission, then definitely the question doesn't arise. If the purchaser has to pay the commission, his contract with the commission agent is different from the contract of sale of goods to the buyer. And therefore, they are independent transactions, and both of the sections can be applied to different amounts involved. It's not the same amount involved. It's not the total purchase consideration that is subject matter of 194H and 194Q. What is subject matter of 194H would be only the commission element, not the entire purchases. This we need to keep in mind. We have to bifurcate the transaction properly. That we need to keep in mind.
Okay, sir. Next one. Buyer deducting TCS under 206C, then seller required to TDS under 194Q. Please clarify.
I think this has been clarified more than once in the presentation itself. And I would request you to read the provisions of the section, both 194Q, 206C 1H, as well as circular number 13, because they are devoted enough time and effort on that.
Next one. Sir, the commission agent at APMC have turnover in GST about 10 crore, but in income tax only the commission income. So section 194Q will apply to that commission agent?
Commission agent, it should not apply at all. If he is accounting for only the commission agent, it would not apply at all. And the purchases would be on behalf of somebody else who would be booking the purchases. So that person who is booking the purchases would definitely be paying tax under 194Q. Who is booking the purchases is important. Are you booking the purchases? Is your system of accounting making you enter all the purchases in your name and then you are selling? In that case, you would be liable. If it is only the commission that you're booking in your books, then the question will not arise.
Okay. TCS on sale of liquor collected by A from B. So now whether B has to deduct TDS on purchase from A?
No, there again, it has been clarified in subsection 5 of 194Q that if 206C other than 1H has already been taken care of under 206C, because liquor is subject matter of 206C, sale of liquor. And that would be 206C. I don't have the specific section right now, subsection, but that is covered other than 1H. And therefore, once 206C applies, 194Q will not apply. That has been specified in subsection 5 of 194Q.
If seller took declaration that TCS will be charged under 2061H, then whether the purchase responsibility will under 94 be absorbed?
No, the declarations are of no use. We have to see the sequence of events. If he has paid advance for his sales, and on that advance, the TCS has already been collected and paid, then 194Q will not apply, which is again clarified in the circular in the last part, which I have covered already. But you cannot take a decision that I will be paying as and when I collect the money under 206C. Therefore, I will pay the money in the future, and therefore 194Q doesn't apply. No, that will not hold good. 194Q will prevail over 206C1H.
194Q on which amount to be deducted under, whether on including GST or otherwise? You had already clarified,
already clarified.
Oil companies like BPCL, HPCL, IOCL are still under VAT. Then TDS under 194Q should be including or excluding VAT. Circular 13 specifically refers to GST and not indirect taxes. I
agree. The wordings are not for GST, but then definitely what have you been doing in the VAT regime? Let us look at it. How was it different in the VAT regime? Merely because VAT has become GST, how does TDS in that effect come into play? At the same time, whatever applies to the GST will apply to VAT provisions also.
Whether higher rate of TDS of 5% or double also applies to TDS on property. Above is with reference to the ITR not filed.
Property does not apply. There is an exclusion under 206AB for that. salaries also is not covered. Because if salary was covered, the rate would become more than 42, 80, 84%. If it was double, the rate was to be applicable at the maximum marginal rate.
Failure to deduct tax under 194Q may lead to disallowance under 40A IEA.
Yes,
Is this understanding correct?
absolutely correct. There is no exclusion to 40A IEA for the entire chapter 17B.
What is the meaning of 10 crore total sales or total purchase without GST or with GST?
That should be, again, as I told you, what is your method of accounting? Your bills are how they are booked. If the bills are booked inclusive of GST, then it would be inclusive. If it is exclusive. That again, that clarification is very clear.
Sir, one more question with related to the commission agent. The question was with reference to the commission agent, Kacha Arathia is liable to deduct TDS. Purchased by flour mill of wheat from FCI or government body is liable to TDS under 194Q. Two questions.
Government bodies, that has been clarified already. Government body means whether it is an independent SSE or it is a government department, which does not have a PAN number. Though now under GST, I am told that they are being given the number with G as the entity and covering the entity. But just because it has a PAN number, it is not subject matter of income tax. If it is a government department and an act by which it has been created, then definitely it has got an exemption from the Income Tax Act. And therefore, if it has got an exemption, it will not be covered as far as government department. And the first one was Kacha Arathia and Pakka Arathia.
Yeah.
There again, your method of accounting, whether your commission, only commission or commission inclusive of the main this thing, that would all depend on that. And therefore, accordingly, we will have to take it up. I've already answered this question.
Yes, sir. I think all the questions has been answered by you, sir. विजय भाई, any और कुछ YouTube पे है?
सब मिला के दिया था ना आपको यहाँ पे?
नहीं, बस और कुछ नहीं है ना?
नहीं.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. आपने पूरा एकदम clarify कर दिया. All questions were been answered by you with a great detail. Now,
my pleasure.
कुछ announcement है सर, नहीं तो फिर vote of thank you पे जाते हैं.
एक ही है कि we will be having our next lecture tentatively on 24th of July on issues in e-filing under the new portal. So the details would be announced.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yes.
I think I will thank the consortium of association to give me the opportunity to moderate the seminar, and also thank all the participants who have joined on Zoom platform as well as on YouTube. Now coming to the pleasant task of vote of thanks to Atul sir. Sir, we are very thankful to you for deliberated on such a complex topic of TDS and TCS, which are ever expanding with every budgets presented by the finance minister in a very simple language. Thank you, sir. On behalf of the consortium of association and all participants present here, I propose a very well-deserved vote of thanks to Sri Atul sir for being present on Saturday evening and deliberated on such a dry but a hot topic of the day and making it a lively. At the end, I will say, sir, that it was a very well spent Saturday evening. Thank you, sir. Thank you, one and all.
May I just make one request?
Please, sir. Please, sir.
I would request all these associations to give me one assurance that the representation would be made for matching the cost with a matching revenue for complying with TDS. If that's what, then I would really consider it worth having represented before all of you. And we have to make this effort and see to it that the government is made aware that this increase in cost is not going to be accepted by the economy or by the business class. And we have to ensure that there is a matching revenue that is given to all the tax deductors or tax collectors. I request all the associations to give me an assurance that such a representation would be made.
We will take it up, sir, definitely.
Thank you so much.
At least I can speak for 3 associations: All India Federation, Tax Practitioners Thane, and Tax Friends Mumbai. We will definitely take it up at that time.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you all for once again.
Karnataka State Tax Practitioners Association will join, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sharma ji. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now with this, I think there is nothing more to add, and we will close the meeting.